Okay, my friends, another shocker du jour today about Mars. I have been posting about Mars continuously for the last year or so about the biology that's on Mars. Now, today they come up with this methane on Mars. Well, what's that all about? Where did methane come from? Well, where does methane come from, first of all? And then I will tell you why the scientists are so baffled. They're baffled. They have no idea what to think about this. All right, I know a lot of people don't want to get too deep into chemistry, so I'm not going to get deep, but we have to understand about methane. Why does this baffle them? It only comes from organic material. That only comes from plants and animals. So let's discover what actually is methane. Well, methane is the breakdown and the decay of organic material, and you get carbon and you get 4 hydrogens surrounding the carbon, and that's pure methane. Now, in addition to pure methane, which is CH4, the carbon and 4 hydrogens, you can also have CH3. That's called a methyl group, and that can only come from methane. So in order to get a methyl group, which is this, a methyl group derived from methane. You have to have methane to get the methyl group. Well, this is all over up there. It's everywhere. CH3 is literally everywhere. You see this? This is this Webb telescope. For the very first time, this is the very first detection of this ion, which is CH3, is the methyl group. And this is from the Webb telescope. First detection, crucial molecule. This is just not even a year ago, and they just don't pay attention to this. They let it go to the side. Same thing happened with 67P. This is the spectral analysis of 67P, which is the comet. They went up to look, CH3, and all the molecules, and they said, yeah, it's all organic. Iron oxide is the same thing as in your blood. These are the gases that are spewing out of this comet, and I mean spewing out. When the sun hit it, it is just spewed out like absolutely amazing. Look, when the sun hits the artery deep inside here, that's an artery, it spews out all these gases. Those aren't just dust. Same thing with all the little blood vessels, but it has to hit it just the right way, and then they gas off, and it has to be close enough to the source of the radiation to do it. So when they get close to the sun, coming in, they think it's just dusting off from the solar wind. No, it's burning and smoking, basically, just like a gas grill. And that's why astronauts say this. Now, don't forget, everything in space is basically cooking. And as far as I'm concerned, there is nothing in space that is not biological. Nothing I can find. And this is what it looks like when it's shooting its gases out. And what do those gases consist of? Well, they consist of the things that the astronauts speak about, which is here. When they go out on a space station, it smells like burnt steak. Space scientists have said that the source of the metallic burnt metal meat stink can be the same attributed to polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons found in charred foods on Earth. They routinely occur in outer space. They're just everywhere. That's because everything is burning up and gassing off. And that's why these astronauts can smell it on their spacesuits after they take a walk. They come in, they say, smells like sirloin. Only it's a lot of other metals, because here's what happens in blood. Here's what blood is. A panel of 26 elements was quantified in whole blood and in plasma. Look, these are all metals. These are all metals, 26 different metals. And then there's iron, and there's all kinds of other stuff, but mostly it's all the metals. The metals do the things that carry things around in your body. What they need to do is get somebody that understands biology, anatomy, chemistry, and you know, what's in space. They have to wash the minds of all these people that have been mental-sided to believe light never slows down. That's one thing that's just crazy. Light just slows down. It's not the redshift, everything pulling away. There's so many problems here. But let's just concentrate on Mars for the moment. But we got to get into everything. Everything has got to be taken anew now. You know, this peer review nonsense is nothing more than racketeering. We tell you what you have to say, or we will fail you. That's just nothing more than bullies. All right, just to recap, we know methane is from the breakdown of organic living creature type things. We know that CH3 is part of methane. It's a breakdown from methane. So you have to have the methane to get to the CH3. We know that they have found this CH3 in this Hubble Webb telescope, and they finally found it, and they think this was all developed at what they consider to be this Big Bang. These are all molecules of life that are everywhere. And this astronauts confirm it. It smells like steak in space. Okay, we got a lot of work to do, but the first thing I want to do is start off by saying how big are the creatures that I'm going to be talking about. They were enormously gigantic. And I have one here that's a hair follicle, right here. All right, that's a hair follicle. This is 1,000 times bigger than a hair follicle in us. That right there is the erector pili muscle attachment right here. That makes your hair go up on end. That is the hair shaft. All right. This right here, you see this globby looking stuff? That's the sebaceous gland. That oils up the hair so it can come out nice and smooth. Now that, you see all this gooey stuff all around the top? That would have been up here, higher up, but it's slid down and the shaft is broken off somewhere right about here. So this is slid down here now. Now, here's, of course, the root, and it comes down, and those two little dots there are the vein and the artery down at the bottom. All right, this is 2 inches wide, and a normal hair follicle is 2/1000ths of an inch. So this is 1,000 times bigger. So this would be about, figure, a mile tall person. That's good size, but it's really nothing compared to the other ones I'm going to show you. The universe is a very strange place, and there were tiny creatures, and it was just absolutely stunningly large. And Mars is 100% saturated with life, and nobody has opened their eyes big enough to see it. It's undeniable. So my hair follicle is here on Earth, but in space, this is stuff like this right here. This is Comet 67P. This is a hip socket, and it's broken off right here. There's the neck and so forth. Now, I've looked at this extremely careful. I have the spectral analysis and all that. Here's what this is. That broke off somewhere like out here. And you have the ball and the socket and this piece. All right, now, there would be an artery going in to service that. Here's what it looks like in the body. There's some tendon attachments here, and there's the ball up into the socket. And then there's going to be some blood to supply the, all of the tissue. All of your tissue has to be supplied with blood. So there's going to be an artery there. And here's where that artery is, right here. That's the ball. That's that little neck coming up. This is a different look. The other hip socket goes off this way. Anyway, these are little blood vessels, and they're shooting off into the air. They're being cooked because the sun is hitting it exactly right to cook off the blood that is down in these cavities. And this is a gigantic artery, and the sun is hitting it just right, and it's sending off all its gases, which are the metals and the blood, all those different metals into space. That's why it smells like space. I mean, like steak. All right, and here's where it's coming out of, this gigantic thing. Look, it's 40 meters is this wide. All right, I've calculated this out to be somewhere around 500 feet wide from here to here. All of these are little blood vessel entryways to feed and service all of the tissues that were inside there with blood. That's what an artery does. It passes the blood along. And then the other ones, the blood vessels, move it up into the tissues up above. You need one big feeder, and that's it right there. This goes back almost 10 years ago. So that is Comet 67P, and here's how big it is. Well, let me show you this. This is where the tendon attaches. Remember I showed you how it latches up in here, and then there's some tendons run this way and that way. These are all tendons too. All of those little straps are to pull this thing one way and the other, and that pulls it the other way. These pull it one way and that pulls it the other way, that type of thing. And this is all basically blood residue that's dried off and drifted down here. And when they took these particles and looked at them, they had those methyl groups, which only come from organic molecules. And they just said, yeah, well, it's all organic. Have a nice day. Let's just keep running around, keep looking. We're just going to keep on looking. They refuse to discuss any of this stuff. And here's how big Raleigh, North Carolina is, and here's how big Comet 67P is. It's substantially larger. And that would be a very bad day to be in Raleigh. All right, this is a crazy thing. I'm going to show you this on Mars. I'm going to show you this on Mars. They call them the Mars blueberries. They call this the Mars Morse code. And here's on Earth, this is Huntington Beach in the United Kingdom, and that's nothing more than skin, and that's flesh, and these are the balls that invested in here that keeps your flesh from being able to pull this way and that way but come back. They're all being coated by some kind of sea moss or whatever is growing on those things because there's still blood in them. That's just a bloody wall. All right, and that's what this is right here. It's the exact same thing. And the balls have eroded because they're tough as can be, and all of the straps just turn into mud. And that's what you see here. These are the Moki marbles, and these are all in Utah, Arizona, all in that area. And that's nothing more than skin that has completely eroded, and then the mud has washed away, and they're laying on the basement layer of skin. The same thing happened up on Mars, and they're called the Moki marbles here up on Mars. They're called the Mars blueberries, and this is called the Mars Morse code. And then I'm going to show you another one. It's called the Mars crab, which is nothing more than an artery. All right, this is some of the first pictures they sent back from Curiosity. These are the Mars Morse code, they say. And this is good size. I don't have an exact distance, but you can see these straps are pulled, stretched right out. This was skin, and this is crunched together, and this is crunched together. This is stretched out, and this is a little bit stretched. And that was very stretched. And as it eroded from the dust, only dust, there's no rain up on Mars. You see how finely dusted this is? This is like somebody just barely sandblasted this away, just nice and gentle. There's no raindrops ever hit this. Now, but it did dust away the cheap straps. The straps are less hard than the balls. So you end up with the balls, and they call these the Mars blueberries. The straps erode away, and in the right conditions, they will erode away, and then they'll just turn into mud. And in this case, they're just being dusted off because there is no more erosion from moisture up there. At one time there was, and at one time it created these Mars blueberries, which are somewhere in here. Here they are, right here. This is a picture from Mars. This is not here on Earth. I showed you the Moki marbles. No difference whatsoever. This, you can see the basement layer of skin, and they're laying on top of it. All right, that's what that is. These are the Moki marbles, and they are identical to what we have here on Earth. And so is the Morse code is identical to the side of that wall here, and the balls have eroded out, and it looks like this when you look at it. All right, that's what we're looking at, it flat laying on the ground like this. This one here is laying like this. So as it gets washed away, the balls just drop, and we only see the red fleshy stuff. But these are the balls. If you could look really carefully, you can see there's all balls all in here. And that's what's laying down here now. And the white stuff collapses over the top of it and sort of obscures it until they get out here a little further, and you can see them easily. as the water washes all this clay away, which is nothing more than skin and tissue. And I believe this right here was the attachment point for that bowl. And that looks like an attachment point there. It's hard to tell, but you're going to have more growth right around the attachment point, because that's where all the source of nutrition is. And these are, like I say, these are balls that have a lot of nutrition in them. Now, once they get to this state, there's no nutrition left at all. But some of them, when they just come out of the frozen ground, and you see these, they're just completely covered with moss. See these are everywhere, and they're just completely covered with moss, because the blood is still good and dense inside here. And these are freshwater. A creature died here in a freshwater area, so that's why they're not covered with all that other kind of brown looking stuff in the ocean, because that's salt water. Two different variations. But look at them, they're everywhere. This whole area was skin, everywhere, 100%. It was all skin. Now it's thawing out, and the moss is growing like crazy. Moss absolutely thrives on red blood, and all plants do. Any green plant does. They love it. There's a lot of nitrogen, and then all of the transition metals that are in blood move everything around. They're transition metals. They have charges on them, and they attract, and they're called ligands. They run all through the system, dragging particles around and delivering them. But they also have a lot of nitrogen. But the transition metals are really fabulous, because that's what blood is made out of, is basically transition metals. I think I showed you, but if I didn't, here it is one more time. There are 26 elements in whole blood and plasma, all metals, all metals. This is what this whole study was about, was blood metals. And they wanted to see what's normal and what isn't normal. Metallic profile. It's all literally, your blood is almost 100% made of metals. The rest is just fluid, a nice fine fluid of plasma, watery fluid. All right, just to catch up. I showed you the little balls with the moss all over them. I showed you the Moki marbles, and I showed you the Huntington Beach with the wall eroding. I showed you what fascia looks like. I showed you the balls up on Mars, which are the Mars blueberries. I showed you the fascia here, which is on Mars. They call it the Mars Morse code. This and this came back at the same time from Mars, as well as the Mars crab. And here's the Mars crab, is somewhere up in here, or maybe not. Hold on a second. All right, here it is right here. These are sarcomeres, which are muscle bundles. They pinch together like this. All of the red pinchy stuff has eroded away. These are just our connective tissue. They just slide in and out, and they don't erode. These are tough, tough, tough. That right there is an artery. These are the little arterial blood vessels that go in to service this muscle. That's a muscle sarcomere. These things, the creatures were absolutely enormous, and the reason it's the red planet is because when it got hit by Venus, and Venus hit it and caused the crater up there, all of the creatures died, and there was a lot of blood. There was a lot, and this is all ferrous oxides are the red planet. That's what it is, ferrous oxides. That's what causes things to be red, is red blood. All right, I showed you the Mars crab. That's it right there. These these erode on these darker spots, just erode away, and you end up with these white fibers that are just the connective tissue, because they come in like this, but the red pulls them in. It's sort of a gooey stuff that erodes away, and you end up with just the white little layers, as I showed you in the Mars crab. Here it is right there. These are the blocks, and these are the little fibers that go in and out like that. And this services all of this with red blood, and I mean gallons and gallons of it takes to run your body. It's just continuously tons of blood flow through. You have no idea how much blood is running through your body right now. And especially you start running and jumping and it needs more oxygen. It just, and this is where it comes from. And this is where it goes, into those muscle sarcomeres. And that gives them the energy with the oxygen to do this. Now don't forget, every single thing that I have shown you here creates methane. Methane is the breakdown of organic molecules into hydrocarbons, CH4. Then methyl groups are CH3. One of the hydrogen goes away, but they're still a product of methane. Methane is a product of life. Life is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Space is saturated with these molecules. Even this Webb telescope says, yeah, well, we finally found it. It's there. So they've just found it. And they think it was formed in a Big Bang. They just always missed it. All right, so they know now that this CH3 is literally everywhere, and CH4 as well. All right, so now we know the chemistry. We understand the chemistry. Hydrocarbons, products of organic material, CH3, CH4, ferrous oxides. All of them have been presented in these asteroids, meteorites, comets. They're everywhere. It's because life literally exists everywhere. Space is saturated with hydrocarbons. Comets spew them out when they get close enough to cook off the gases. Astronauts smell them and say it smells like burning steak out there. Somebody turn the grill down. Okay, my friends, I've shown you literally dozens and dozens and dozens of times the same sort of stuff. And apparently it's not getting through to teachers or anybody that is interested in examining this evidence. Now, that's all I'm asking for in this examination. I've shown you that I actually have the body parts here, and I have other ones that are DNA tested, CAT scanned, everything, and they are available to be looked at. And I am making all of these claims, and I'm going to show you right now what they just did up on Mars. They took a core sample, and what's a core sample? They take a drill. It's like a big round drill, and there's no center to it, so it drills around the outside and leaves the core in the center. All right, so a big round like dish going down, and then they pull this core out, so it's basically undisturbed. However, when that thing circles around there, it rips up the edges, and this is all ripped off. But normally that white would have been all the way across. Now let's look at that white really close. All right, I'm going to tell you right now, that is skin. That's skin cells. And they are irradiated, so they've turned white. Yes, they're on Mars. There's no protection from the radiation, so they had turned white. But below them is this, and what is that? That is nothing more than interstitium. These black balls and these little straps and so forth, and these colors. I want to show you. I have exactly the same thing here on Earth in my mud fossils. All right, mine didn't turn white like that because it's not been irradiated like that, but it's basically the same thing. All right, this is where I want you to focus first, on these connections between all of these little separate particles, basically. And then, like I said, they lay over the top of this, all right, which is a matrix of some sort. Now, I say it's basically, this would be the top layer. If this was irradiated for a long enough period of time, it would turn white. It would just wash out, just like anything does in the sunlight. And we don't have much sun compared to Mars. So that would turn basically the same as this stuff right here. Now, what's below this? Well, we know this is below it on Mars. Well, what's below what I just showed you? And by the way, it's my belt, if I didn't mention that. What's below this layer? All right, what's below that layer is exactly the same thing that's below the layer here. It's this stuff right here. Now, what is that stuff? That's a matrix of collagen fibrils and balls and straps. And these are some of the fibrils here, but there's balls everywhere, they're everywhere. And each one of them has a strap attached to it. So you can move and do this and that, and the straps will pull and then it'll come back. And that's what that does, and it's directly below the skin. So that's the skin, the hide, and right below it is that layer, which is this layer here. So I'm looking at the bottom. Here, basically, this is exactly what we're looking at. The top first, and then the bottom. This is the bottom. And this is genuine cowhide. Genuine leather. All right, and this has got the coolest thing because they burnt something into this. And when they did, they forced the fluids to come out. And it's just so fabulous looking. Wait till you see it. It's unbelievable. Okay, in the interest of science, I defaced my belt. This is where those little balls are. And they all have straps. You see the straps in here? There's billions of them. Literally thousands and thousands and thousands of them. Now, all of these balls were attached to these straps. I just gouged it with a razor knife. But you can see the balls are a little more tough. But I just dug away at it so you could see the difference between here and here, which is basically the same thing you see here. The difference between here and here. All right, so I believe I've shown that the things up there are, you know, in outer space, the things is comet 67P. There's just no way to deny that. The chemistry's here. The chemistry's here. The anatomy's there. The gas is squirting out of these anatomical orifices. It can't be denied. Literally can't be denied. It's there. It's there. So we need an anatomist. We need a chemist. We need a biologist. You know, it wouldn't hurt to have somebody that knew something about the ancient texts and the ancient myths, because this falls into these myths. I'm sorry, it just does. I'm not a conspiracy person. I'm a material scientist. I know this stuff pretty well. And I understand chemistry. I understand the physics. I understand these ancient texts. I understand all of it. And it all makes sense once you put it all into context and you say, holy smokes, this stuff is real. I mean, it's scary, but it's real. And I got a lot to go over here. But I got to show you this one thing. This is just stunning. Wait till you see this. This is where my belt, this thing right here on my belt. Let me show you this. All right, this is just too much. Every spring, after it gets real cold up there, and after the spring thaw, the heat hits really hard because there's no solar insulation, there's no ionosphere or any of that stuff to slow anything down. So they notice these things. You got to have a special instrument to see this, but they seen them. They said these look like little spiders, eerie spiders scattered through Inca City on Mars. There's this thing they call Inca City. Now look at where they congest right here. And I'm going to tell you right now, I know what these things are, and I'll show you in my belt. That's what I say, the most unbelievable little thing. Look at how they're so similar. Look at how they're little pinchy things that come together. Every one of them, pinchy, everywhere. And this is stacked up here. Now, this is stacked up, I believe, because there's some kind of an attachment point there. Now, where do you see this? This, again, is like these little dots. Now watch this. This is my belt. I think I might have just shown you this, but this is the place on the belt I'm going to be showing you. Look, it almost looks like the Inca City thing. They welded this thing in so that they could put a utility belt or some utility gear or something like that. And all these little dots popped up because of the heat. Otherwise, you wouldn't see those. You don't see them anywhere else in the belt other than where they burnt this thing in here. You don't see those so highlighted. I got another shot of it really close up. Look at them. Now, look carefully. You're going to see, this is those white fibers. All right, they're everywhere. And then these are the little black balls, and they, I don't know what they do. They burn up or they blow up, or these are little blood vessels. I'm not exactly sure what they are. They could be the black balls, or they could be the little tiny blood vessels. A blood vessel has to go to every single cell in your body. So they're going to be everywhere. And you're seeing them pop out of the Mars Inca City. That's what's popping up, these little things. I believe that's exactly what I just showed you. Only ours, or mine, what I'm showing you out of my belt, is being driven out by burning into it. These are being heated up and sort of shown up in this specific type of imagery. They can see certain wavelengths, and they can see darker ones here than these. So these are absorbing light, which is what blood would do and what they would do in that area, and this is more reflective. And this is showing up where these little blood vessels are. It's easily understood once you understand biology, physiology, all that stuff. How the blood flows through the body, the lymph system versus artery versus veins. There's a lot to know, but it's not that hard. See that? That's what they call Inca City. And these are where the blood vessels are down in here. You see the patterns? You see this stuff in between? That's what's called slurpees, SLRPs, small leucine-rich protein. These glue cellular structures together, basically. These are basically like a cellular structures. The same as the Mars Morse code. This is just so staggeringly gigantic. It's same as on Earth. I showed you the stuff on Earth. It's the same sizes. It's absolutely stunningly huge. This is skin. That's skin. And this is what the balls are underneath the skin. And here's what they look like in the skin and below. And here's what they look like as an artist's rendition, and they have eroded down. We're talking about just biology everywhere. It's just not 100%, and in space. And I have meteorites here that have blood in them. They could be tested, and I'm willing to have that done to the right place if they want to check my meteorites. I have 2 of them, well, 3 or 4 actually, that all have blood in them. And I mean in large quantities, not just little bits that you could, I mean, it's unbelievable. And the anatomy is flawless and all that stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, there is nothing but biology, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Even Omaru Maru, that's a finger. That's not some spaceship or something. Omaru Maru, another comet. And Bennu, they just took a sample off there. That's a heart. When they get, I know they have it here, and they've been looking at it. And when they do, they're going to find the chemistry that I just showed you in this blood panel test. All right, and this is very, very detailed. You see this? They have every one. This will be the whole blood. This is all whole blood. These are quantities and the types and all the different metals. And then you go into plasma. This is where, I don't know where they landed, exactly what it was. And then you go to serum. So these are all different areas of blood and the different quantities. There's nothing they have to do. I just want to see what they found. I want to see what they found for these different things. We just paid billions of dollars to have that done. I'd like to see, is it blood? And I believe it is. All right, I just got a ton of stuff going on here, but let me just show you a few final sort of things. This is one of those little skin investments up on Mars, and these are all little blood vessels that have to go. Don't forget, every single cell has to be fed with blood. So this is like an investment site, and that's the coloration. It's obviously highlighted. Now, this is what regular skin looks like. All right, very, very similar. And that's the size of a hair, And you got all this kind of, depends on where it is in your body too. There's all kind of different places that have different patterns, and some of them, I think this was an elbow. And you see that? This is not too far off. That's not too far off, my friends. And this is what it is. It is what it is. Now, until they can accept this, we're just going to walk around in circles. The same thing with Bennu and Psyche. This is Psyche. It's all metal because it's been burnt off, and it's metal because it's all iron and different metals because it's a heart and it's full of blood. And it got burnt off because it got close to something real hot. And you got to be about 3,500 degrees or so to smelt this, which it did, but it's probably only the surface areas. I'm sure inside it's not smelted. Now, there's going to be places in here, you see that? That's not an impact crater. Or is this? You see this? These are valve-looking things. This is a bloody, stony meteorite. Asteroid. And these are valves and so forth. These are not just simple craters. And I'm going to show you what Bennu looks like, which they just landed on there. This is right up close. This is not an artist's rendition. This is the actual thing. That's Psyche, and here is Bennu. It's identical. Identical. Now, not only that, you see this right here? That's not a crater. That's a tube, and it's broken off right here. That is a tube, and that's the tube right there. All right, same thing with this down here. There's another one down here. You see it? That's a tube. And you see the distinct difference coloration here? That's because, and I believe that right there is a valve, or it could be, I don't know. But I see that little structure there, I believe has something to do with a valve. The different colors are the different colors of blood, and these different colors are exactly the different colors of blood. And this is exactly what you would expect, because this is where the tendon locks in and the muscle attaches to that. I'm sure they have some fabulous pictures of this that well, just think about what I'm showing you here. Now let's see what a heart looks like. That's what a heart looks like. And I got all kinds of tubes running out of it too, but this is the part I'm showing you primarily, which is these. All right, I showed you the skin and all that business. And here, where that locks in right here, the tendon, and all this stuff is where the Slurpee was that were attached to the tubes coming down. The tubes are gone. And we're down to the valves. They got ripped off. Now, we're down into this area, right down into here, looking into the heart. And all that blood would have been in that heart, and now it's all metals. And that one got smelted, so they know it's all metal. Now, this is what a regular heart looks like, and this is that tendonish spot I told you, and this is where all the Slurpee was that holds on the valve tubes. It's just more than glue, nothing more than like glue, and it's got to be able to do this and this and move this way and that way in all kinds of ways, and your heart has to be able to move, but your heart can't go moving so far that it rips away from that tubing. Well, in the dryness of space or wherever, or whatever, however it died, I don't know. This stuff is gone. This is the weak stuff when you get away from being pumped with blood all the time. That turns weak. This is never going to get weak. That's the tendon. And the rest is just muscle. So we're down here at Bennu, and we can see that quite easily. You see, that's where the tendon was, right there. And that reaches over to the muscle so that the heart can do that. This whole gooey area here was holding the tubes on. They're gone. The goo went with them. Some of the tubes are still hanging out the side. And a lot of these, there's so much blood going on in your heart. You have no idea. Not just the blood that's in there. It's completely 100% saturated with blood. And I got a shot of that somewhere. Here it is right here. That's what a heart has for blood. That's its own blood. It's got to feed all of these muscles. All right, and it breaks right off there, and you lose all that plumbing, and you're down into where the valves are. I got a lot of information on this. It just has to be looked at, that's all. All right, I think I've shown pretty well what's going on here, and I do understand this very, very well. And I understand what this is, and very, very few people do. As a matter of fact, I don't think anybody does. And I will explain it in my next video, because we're going to go back into concretions versus tendon enthesis and so forth, because I've got some new information about that. They would call that some kind of a concretion, but why doesn't it fall over? What's going on with that? So anyway, we got a lot to talk about, and I've got just too much going on here today to continue any further. But we're going to be, these are muscles. I have all this stuff. This is nothing more than the Mars crab blood running into muscle. And these are not, I can't see the sarcomeres like you can on the Mars crab, but I've shown enough here to substantiate my claims. If anybody can stand up and say, no, Roger, that's not right because of X, Y, or Z, well, tell me just even X. I'd love to hear it. These things are on Mars. Morse code is nothing more than, this is so flawless, it's unbelievable. This is like an anatomy on steroids. An autopsy on steroids. It's just they dusting off little particles here and there until you get exactly. That's just fabulous. It's incredible. And all the other ones are too. There's a Mars crab. You can't get any better than that. You can still see the blood vessels. Mine, you can't see the blood vessels. You can see every single bit of detail in the sarcomeres. Every bit of detail. Mine's still in its solid form. I got this one, and I got another one that shows it. But these are the sarcomeres in there, and if you got close enough, you'd see them. And these are the arteries that are running the blood down to service them. So I am not without evidence. I am saturated, inundated with evidence to support my claims, and I see no evidence that they claim there's never been any sign of life on Mars. I have just shown you more than ample evidence to support my side of this. They say the Martian methane baffles scientists because there's methane. Curiosity Rover, surprising discovery. This is just today. And they say NASA Curiosity Rover detected methane in this crater on Mars. Surprising find as there are no signs of life on the planet. And they say there's never been life on the planet that they can tell of. So they're desperately looking for microbes. You don't have to look for microbes. I showed you things that are not microbial at all. They're just completely gigantic creature things. And this is the key. They saw all these things when they first came back from Mars, or for the Curiosity mission landed and sent all back the Morse code and the blueberries and the crab and all that stuff. And they just laughed it off, and because they couldn't explain it. Instead of digging deep into it, they laughed it off and just stumbled away. All right, so I guess that's the last thing I have to say, but we're going to get in real deep. I got a lot of microscopic shots and stuff. And of course, we need to go through the ancient texts about how Mars got destroyed in the first place because it got hit by Venus. All of this was recorded. Velikovsky was destroyed for making these comments back in 1950. It was called Worlds in Collision. It was a collision here. I actually wrote a book about him about 10 years ago because he was being forgotten in history. He was still destroyed. He's destroyed to this day. If you mention his name, very few people know it. It's Immanuel Velikovsky. Worlds in Collision. Ages in Chaos. There's another one, Akhenaten and Oedipus and Akhenaten, something like that. Anyway, it's all of this transitional period from when all of this, the celestial devastation happened. We almost got hit by Venus, and then Venus hit Mars. It's all recorded. You have to read Worlds in Collision, Immanuel Velikovsky. But I'm going to be going through all that because he's got some things that aren't right either, I don't think. With the new information, with all this stuff, he had no way to see any of this stuff or any of the other things I'm showing you. All of these Morse code and all of this biology that was out there. But he was sort of intimating that there could be something going on with the ancient myth because it all lined up with what was happening. And we just discarded it and said these people were just making up stories when 100% of the cultures on Earth, 100% had stories of giants, celestial battles, dragons, all kinds of catastrophes, and the Great Flood, and gods, and eternal life, and all this stuff. They knew much more about reality than we do right now, my friends. So I'm going to leave it at that. Have a sterling day. Stay tuned in. We're going to get into everything because every day they're releasing more and more information. I think they're getting ready to let the cork come off of the champagne bottle.